Live. This is HOA Today. HOA Today is brought to you by Zayuk. Zayuk is a smart property system. We are a company that provides software as well as an inspection service. That inspection service is your reserve study inspection, which for some states such as California or Florida, those are required by the state, or other states where they're not required, it's still a great tool to have. And when you double it with our reality capture, which is a survey grade level capture of your property, it becomes something else. It becomes an infrastructure set for you to coordinate your property's logistics, the supply chains, the vendor appropriation, the vendor awareness, to give new vendors the context that incumbents usually have, to give potential vendors the tools to bid appropriately and consistently across the spectrum, and to really give yourselves the tools to manage property, to manage sophisticated, complex property with various types of systems. Those systems can include HVAC, electrical, plumbing, drainage, sewer, elevator, balcony, fencing, roofing, painting, structural, asphalt, sidewalk, legal, accounting, all these various systems that come together to create the system of systems, which is known as your property, which includes component systems like your buildings, and it's complicated. And additionally, when you include aspects like governance and voting, which are features and tools in Zayuk, we give you anonymous voting, or we give you non-anonymous voting, which doubles as polling if you need a non-anonymous system and you want to know how people are feeling, or you can actually do governance voting, which in some states is permitted. And so along with our asset directory, along with our voting system, along with our inspection system, where we give you the context and the visuals to understand your property. When you have the vision, when you're able to see what you're talking about, it becomes much simpler instead of trying to imagine, oh, we're talking about the southeast corner. We're talking about bidding on this one side of the building versus the whole building. We're talking about this sprinkler system over here, not that sprinkler system over there. And so it gives you appropriate context for those items. And our system is tailor made and tailor built for HOAs and condos, homeowner associations and condo associations. But as we mentioned last week, we will be moving to private ownership and REITs, because our inspection service, our smart contract system, our bidding system, it's a very powerful tool, although HOAs are gravely important. Understanding decentralized asset ownership, which is the context of much of our company, much of Zayuk, the basis of it is decentralized asset ownership. When you have a piece of property that is owned by many stakeholders, and the maintenance and management of that property, and we will hopefully soon get into actually building, but that might take a while. At the moment, it's about maintenance, it's about management of what exists. So we will continue with some current events. We usually go through some current events on the day surrounding HOAs. So this is a terrible accident that occurred. Birmingham condo destroyed by fire. This is reported by WXYZ. Birmingham, Michigan, destroyed a condo, killed a family pet on Monday morning just before 10 a.m. on Putney Street. It appears to have been electrical in nature. And here in California, many people who have had outdated electrical work actually have increases in their insurance related to fire because outdated electrical work can be hazardous. 30 to 40 feet, black clouds, and flames about 10 to 15 feet. The fire department was there within 2 minutes of calling. Homeowners were not home. One animal perished in the fire, a cat. It's very sad. Fire started on the first floor and appears to be caused by an electric malfunction. However, may have sparked it is what he's still looking into. Wow. That is huge. And you can see why insurers have issues with these types of items because, I mean, it's a huge issue. Something could spark, something could go wrong, and outdated electrical work becomes critically important to manage. This is from the Straits Times, a new article, more older condos resold as buyers seek space and value. Demand for condos over 40-year tripled since 2018. Older condos are cheaper compared with those that are under 5 years old. This is saying less than half cheaper. $1,115 per square foot versus $2,479 per square foot for under 5 years. And this is by the Straits Times. I'm not exactly sure where. Oh, Singapore. This is Singapore. Zayuk is not available. And actually, give me one moment. We may be. It is available. Yeah, Zayuk is available in Singapore. And so in Singapore, these items become, I'm sure, even more. I know Singapore has a huge housing issue, affordability, of course, that's understandable. It's such a small country. But that makes this all the more important. Old, new, if you're purchasing, $2,500 per square foot for a condo, use Zayuk Safe. Give yourself the tool to be able to actually take care of your property and give yourself the context to understand it. Okay, we're going to move on. USLI claims Liberty wrongly denied coverage for a California HOA. Two insurers over who should have bought a cover for California HOA in a dog bite lawsuit. It's playing out in federal court. This is by Insurance Business, written by Tez Romero. Complaint against Liberty Insurance, Central District of California. Reimburse the Palisades Homeowner Association number 3 after an individual was bitten by a pit bull owned by residents in the HOA. The story starts in July 2021. when an attorney on behalf of the individual filed the lawsuit, names the residents and the HOA as defendants, strict liability against the residents, and negligent infliction of emotional distress, premises liability, and private nuisance against both the residents and the HOA. Commercial liability coverage. Should Liberty step in and defund the HOA, or does the job fall to Liberty? Argues the policy language covers any person or organization legally responsible for animals owned by the insured. The CCRs come into play. State owners, mortgages, occupants, and all other persons acquiring any interest in the property are subject to the rights, easements, covenants, conditions, restrictions, and obligations set forth in the CC&R. Section 10, Article 8 provides that no animals may be kept which results in annoyance or are obnoxious to residents in the vicinity, and that any owner shall be absolutely liable to each and all remaining owners, their families, guests, and invitees, and to the association for any and all damage to person or property caused by any pets brought upon or kept under the units. Their insurance denied the HOA's request, being sued not due to the bite itself, but because the HOA did not take appropriate action against the residents in response to prior incidents. Liberty claims the association does not meet the policy's definition of an insured, so it's off the hook. This is very complicated. Now USLI is asking the court to declare that the HOA is covered under Liberty's policy, that Liberty must defend and indemnify the HOA, and that USLI's own policy only kicks in after Liberty's is exhausted. USLI wants Liberty to reimburse any amounts USLI has already paid or may pay in connection with the underlying action. That's a very complicated case. And here's some other HOA issues on bottom. I'll actually check these out at the bottom of this article. So it's United States Liability Insurance Company filed a complaint against Liberty Insurance Corporation. And so there are two suits. One, the original dog bite versus residents that owned the dog and the HOA, and then also these two insurance companies over where the liability for this issue seems to lie, which is very interesting. It's complicated. That's a very complicated issue. Not easy to understand. Of course, you need a lawyer, an insurance provider that specify an HOA. And we go through this just to speak about them, to understand what's going on in the industry, to understand what people are facing, what people care about. What people care about are a few things. Governance, that was safety, understanding. I mean, that right there is complicated and seems like a unique issue. A lot of what we talk about is relative to governance. A lot of what we talk about is relative to finances, and the finances are usually related to asset hygiene. And so I've been saying this for a few live streams, that the three things to consider strongly when purchasing into a residence with an HOA, especially one, I mean, goes for any, but especially one where infrastructure, walls, systems like plumbing and roofing, when you share the building, it becomes a different aspect. It becomes a different beast than, say, single family homes. Single family homes, there's a clear deviation unless there's shared amenities, but you have a lot, they have a lot. But once everyone shares the same lot and it becomes appropriated based off of condos, based off of units within a building, it changes townhomes, condos. But first is asset hygiene. Does everything look like it's well kept? How is the landscaping? How is security? How is the shared amenities like the mailboxes or the anything, laundry, gym, pool, clubhouse, recreation areas? Does it look like it's being upkept? Does it look like it's degrading? How's the curb appeal? Are there cracks in the asphalt? How's the painting? Does it look like it's being well kept? Maybe you ask someone. Very likely it's difficult to understand because residents are naturally not happy with their HOA, which is understandable. A huge part of this comes to constant, consistent communication. And when you can't provide that, it becomes a huge issue. People don't know where they're at, they don't know how things are going. And being consistent with your communication is helpful for people to understand and to not be surprised. People don't like to get thrown off. So that's one, is asset hygiene. And I just went on a little tangent about communication and how that can help save face with residents. Two is finance hygiene. That is not so obvious. And one issue with homeowner associations and purchasing into them is many people don't understand this is a business. It's a business. It's run and registered as a business within your state, very likely. And when you purchase into a business, you can purchase into good businesses and you can purchase into bad businesses. And understanding what makes an HOA a good business versus a bad business, one, is not always the most important consideration for people. Usually it isn't. The most important consideration for people is lifestyle, proximity to other lifestyle, work, children's schooling, recreation, area they actually want to live in, these types of things, as well as believing it's a good investment as a store of value. So those are the two reasons. And people put a lot of weight onto the first one, which is important. And when we get to point three, it will become even more important when we talk about lifestyle. But two, it's because of what you're purchasing into a business and you're looking at it as a store of value, but understanding the business that you're purchasing into is not easy. It's not what's the word I'm looking for? It's not inherently obvious what makes this business good, what makes it bad, how can I interpret the quality of this business? It's through various financial documents, finding out what has been the budgets over the last 5 years. Have they increased significantly? If they have increased or they haven't increased, what is the outlook for the next 3 to 5 years? Do people expect that to increase significantly, 20, 50, 40%, or should it stay, maybe it increases 3% every year for the next 5 years, keeping up with inflation? Or does it look like there's going to have to be some huge increases? Two, special assessments. Have there been any special assessments in the last 5 to 10 years? And are there any upcoming special assessments? And that comes through your reserve study. So how much money does this business, this association have in the bank? with the reserve study, you also understand what are the upcoming expenses for this business: roofing, foundational work, asphalt, stucco. That might not be on the reserve study. Water heaters, various things that are huge ticket items that need capital to be allocated for years in advance. And that was why a lot of legislation in response to the collapse of the condo and Surfside was very difficult for Floridians and Floridian condo owners, because was it correct to require ample reserves for shared property owners, condo owners? Likely, yes. The issue is it was difficult and almost impossible. It was decades of negligence, because if the association had been appropriately funding its reserves for the decades beforehand, then they were probably fine 2 to 3 years. They might have been a little off, but it wouldn't have been difficult. But when there's negligence for 30, 40 years, and then all of a sudden you have 3 or 4 years of owners needing to buy in to maintain, to meet these requirements, it's nearly impossible, and it wasn't the best protocol. It was stressing out a lot of Floridians, because it needs more time. Those requirements were correct. It is correct to consider needing them. The issue is the return on when the requirements. That was too long. That was too short of a time for too much negligence for some buildings. And so you put that off maybe 8 years or so. And Florida has also required inspections, and that's where our reality capture inspections are huge. Most of the requirements they pass for their new set of laws on HOAs specifically detailed towards buildings that were 3 stories or more. And this is where Zayuk's inspections come into play. If you're a property manager in Florida and you want to add high value to your residents, to your business, come contact me, contact Zayuk, consider reaching out to us, asking us how our reserves inspections can help you. And we're based here in California, but we will come out to Florida. We can do as many properties as you like, reality capture them, give you the tools to understand your properties, log the degradation in a way that is maintainable and automated and integrated. That's the big thing. And this is going to be a bit of a tangent, but just listening to a podcast called Acquired. It's a very good podcast about businesses. It started off mostly tech businesses, but I believe it's expanded. They spoke about Epic Systems and how they had this integrated system, and that's where Zayuk comes into play. And we have all the most important tools well integrated. We're not bringing in a bunch of providers, and we'll integrate with things that we find important or our customers find important, of course. But we have a lot of the tooling that you need in our app, whether that be vendor proposals, whether that be budgeting, whether that be reserve study, whether that be voting, whether that be mobile, whether that be inspections, reserve study inspections. And this will likely only grow in the coming year to 2 years and 3 years, 4 years in our capability. And I'm very excited to roll those out as they come along. But it's about storing property information effectively, as it says right there. Store property information effectively, because cost becomes a huge issue. All right, we'll continue as we see. I mean, this is another issue related to As I'm talking about the dog bite. That's a very unique situation. So this is from insurance business as well. Florida court affirms insurers' right to deny HOA liability coverage. This was released in June, and this article is by Matthew Sellers. Upheld First Community Insurance Company's denial of coverage in a wrongful death lawsuit brought against Catalina West Homeowners Association Incorporated, stemmed from 2019 incident where a resident was ambushed and fatally shot at his home in the gated Cutler Bay, Florida community. That's very extreme. First Community had issued Catalina West a business owner's policy for the relevant period, initially provided a defense under a reservation of rights, but later sought a court ruling that had no duty to defend or indemnify under the policy's physical and sexual abuse exclusion. Excludes coverage for bodily injury, property damage, personal and advertising injury, medical payments, or any other damage directly or indirectly arising out of. The term physical abuse should apply only in contexts involving a relationship of trust or authority and not to random criminal acts. And this seems to be a robbing that was random and a murder that was random. Ambush and fatal shooting involved the kind of cruel and violent treatment the clause was intended to exclude. Emphasize that courts cannot rewrite policy language to create coverage that doesn't exist. The court concluded First Community had no duty to defend the HOA or indemnify it in underlying lawsuit. Wow. Wow. Okay. Well, let's end on something else. So we'll go back to this is getting a lot of coverage. A legislator in Florida spoke about how HOAs are a failed experiment, and now it's gotten huge coverage. As far as HOA articles goes, those obviously don't go hugely viral, but this one is going hugely viral. And it's interesting because they're needed. In my opinion, they're needed. They're also very helpful for people who don't want to own, who don't want to maintain property. But the issue is that they have been in a position where there's not much transparency. There's a lot of lack of, I would say, availability, not availability, but in the industry, there are connections, and those connections run deep, and people get upset. And as the associations and the properties degrade, the cost of not maintaining them properly, which is easy to occur because people love low fees, and after many years of that, many decades, it grows to become a huge problem. And so, in addition to that, we actually stopped because we spoke about the three things people need to consider. First was the home's asset hygiene. Second is the home's financial hygiene. Third is the home's, I'm sorry, these are all related to the property's hygiene in assets. So the curb appeal, the property's financial hygiene, check future and past budgets, budget increases, assessments, upcoming assessments. And then third, so you're not blindsided by these costs. You're like, oh, my mortgage is this much. taxes are this much, HOA fees are this much, but then all of a sudden your HOA fees increase by an exorbitant amount in 2 years, and then you hit by a special assessment, and you're just like, whoa, this was a store of value, and then all of a sudden it becomes a huge financial burden. In a very short amount of time is the issue. If the amount that's paid is increased in time, it becomes less of an issue. And then 3, governance. And this one becomes highly critical. People are upset when they're told that they can't do something. People get very upset. Especially in their own home. And that's the root of the issue. Because when they put all this money down, when they say this is their home and they have a deed to the home, and then all of a sudden they're told, you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that in your home or on your property. They get very upset. And so for lifestyle benefits, when you purchase into an HOA, you're becoming a member of an association, a member of a business, and you sign a set of governance items that you abide by, that you're held to. And when you don't follow them, the liability is held on you because you signed that contract. And in those cases, people need to get serious about whether it's very overlooked sometimes. It's very overlooked and often ignored. It's like, okay, not really thinking about it. But it becomes a huge issue for people when they're told you can't live in that way. You can't do that thing, and that's their home. With a tenant, it might be less of an issue. They can leave. But with someone's home, they have to now sell their home if they want to live in the lifestyle that they want to live in. It becomes hugely difficult for people to handle. And so asset hygiene, financial hygiene, and governance. Keep those in mind when you purchase into an HOA. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Happy Tuesday. Hopefully, everyone had a great Labor Day yesterday. And